I bet you didn't know just how many West Virginians are fighting for something as basic as clean water, all while some have just lost everything to devastating floods. Clean water isn't a luxury. It's a basic human right. You turn on your tap, and you expect the water to be safe for your family to drink, to cook with, to bathe in. You shouldn't have to think twice about it. But for many West Virginians, that trust has been shattered. Recent revelations, pulled from public records that some people tried very hard to keep hidden, have exposed a terrifying truth. The water flowing into their homes has been carrying a silent, toxic threat for far too long, a betrayal that cuts deeper than any river. This isn't some accident or an unavoidable act of nature. This is a story of failure. It's a story about people in power who were supposed to protect their citizens but looked the other way instead. We're learning that, for years, the very agencies tasked with ensuring water safety knew about the dangers lurking in the pipes and did nothing. They didn't just fail to act. They actively concealed the truth from the public. This isn't just negligence. It's a profound moral failing that has put thousands of lives at risk, especially the most vulnerable among us. The situation in West Virginia is a harsh reminder of a lesson I've learned over and over again. When big corporations and complacent governments put profits and convenience over people, it's always the hardworking families who pay the price. They pay with their health, their peace of mind, and sometimes with their lives. The people of West Virginia didn't ask for this fight, but they are in it now. They are fighting for their children, their neighbors, and their future. They are fighting for the simple, fundamental right to clean, safe water. This fight is about more than just what's in the water. It's about accountability. It's about demanding that those who knew and did nothing are held responsible for their inaction. It's about shining a bright light into the dark corners where these decisions were made. The truth is coming out piece by painful piece thanks to Freedom of Information Act requests and the courage of people who refuse to be silenced. And with that truth comes the power to demand change, to ensure that a betrayal like this never happens again to any community. In Huntington, the lack of funds means they can't even test their water, leaving families in the dark about what's coming out of their taps. In Milton, officials claim the water is safe, even as ppm levels remain dangerously high and weakened water protection laws allow PFAS, PCB, vinyl chloride, and other toxins to keep harming families, causing cancer and health issues that never seem to end. And when a chlorine spill threatened the environment, West Virginia authorities didn't even realize they needed to test for it, another sign of just how deep this failure runs. Let's talk about what's actually in the water. We're not talking about harmless minerals. We're talking about a toxic cocktail of chemicals, including something called PFAS. These are forever chemicals because they don't break down in the environment or in our bodies. They are used in all sorts of products, from non-stick pans to firefighting foam. Once they get into the water supply, they stay there. And when you drink that water, they build up in your system over time, creating a ticking time bomb inside your own body. PFAS exposure is linked to a horrifying list of health problems. We're talking about kidney and testicular cancer, liver damage, thyroid disease, and high cholesterol. For pregnant women, the risks are even more severe, including developmental issues for their unborn children. This isn't a guess. It's backed by science. So when these chemicals are found in the water that people are drinking every single day, it's a public health emergency. It's a slow-motion disaster that affects families for generations, a legacy of poison left by industries that didn't care about the consequences. But it doesn't stop with PFAS. The other major villain in this story is lead. We've known for decades that lead is a potent neurotoxin. There is no safe level of lead exposure, especially for children. It attacks the developing brain, leading to permanent learning disabilities, behavioral problems, and a lower IQ. In adults, it can cause kidney damage and high blood pressure. Lead often leaches into drinking water from old pipes, a silent and invisible threat that can rob a child of their future before they even have a chance to start. When you combine lead and PFAS, you have a public health catastrophe. You have entire communities, like those in and around Huntington, being systematically poisoned through their kitchen taps. And it's not just PFAS and lead. In places like Minden, West Virginia, residents have been exposed to PCBs, another toxic chemical left behind from decades of mining. PBS's documentary, Impossible Town, tells the story of how this small community has struggled with PCB contamination, a legacy that still haunts families today. Parkersburg is another infamous example. The DuPont plant there was the focus of the documentaries The Devil We Know and the film Dark Waters, both exposing how PFAS from the plant contaminated the water supply. Instead of cleaning up, regulators simply lowered the acceptable parts per million, making it easier to pass tests while people kept drinking poisoned water. These aren't just names on a lab report, they are dangerous substances causing real, irreversible harm to real people. Every glass of water filled with these chemicals is a gamble, one that residents were forced to take without their knowledge or consent. This is the reality that has been hidden from them, a daily dose of poison delivered by the very system meant to keep them safe. And the dangers keep coming. After the train derailment in Palestine, Ohio, the Ohio EPA stated that no contamination left Ohio. But at the same time, the West Virginia EPA sent an email confirming that they did help with the cleanup effort. This contradiction raises serious questions about the true impact on the region's water and who is really telling the full story. Local news in West Virginia reported that Huntington quietly switched its water source from the Ohio River to the Mud River, water that runs past heavy metals corporations, adding another layer of concern for residents. There are growing fears that water near Marshall University may be contaminated by nearby factories, potentially putting the health of thousands of students at risk. In a state already grappling with a toxic legacy, these new threats only deepen the crisis, leaving West Virginians to wonder what's really in their water and who is telling the truth. The most infuriating part of this whole crisis is that it was preventable. The government agencies responsible for protecting public health had the information they needed to act, and they chose not to. But it goes deeper than inaction. Attorney General Morrissey has actively opposed the EPA's PFAS drinking water rule, fighting against stronger protections for our water. Meanwhile, politicians like Manchin warn about the dangers of relying on China for solar panels and electric vehicle batteries, stoking fears about foreign control over our energy future. Documents uncovered through hard-fought public records requests show a clear pattern of deception. At the same time, Morrissey has supported bills like SB 592 and SB 940, which weaken clean water oversight and make it easier for polluters to get away with dumping toxins. And while the public is distracted by alarmist rhetoric about Chinese pollution and supply chain threats, local leaders quietly undermine renewable energy projects, claiming they're just a backdoor for foreign influence. These agencies knew about the dangerous levels of contamination in the water. And with these policies, pollution in rivers like the Ohio and Kanawha is not just ignored, it's practically invited. Ironically, while officials point fingers at China's environmental disasters, they allow similar neglect right here at home. They had the test results in their hands. Meanwhile, Appalachian Power's instability leaves residents with unreliable electricity, compounding the crisis. And as Justice and Morrissey feud over mining taxes, the real cost is paid by families left in the dark, literally and figuratively. But instead of warning the public and taking immediate action, they buried the reports, stopped testing, and told everyone that the water was perfectly fine. Morrissey and other officials have pushed for more private sector control of utilities, promising efficiency but delivering higher bills and less accountability. At the same time, they stoke fears about renewables, claiming solar and EVs are just ways for China to infiltrate our economy. Think about that for a moment. Public servants whose salaries are paid by taxpayers deliberately hid information that could save lives. When concerned citizens and local groups started asking questions and filing requests for water quality data, they were met with silence, delays, and outright denials. It was a calculated effort to avoid accountability and public outcry. They treated a public health emergency like a public relations problem, hoping it would just go away. This wasn't a simple oversight. It was a conscious decision to sacrifice public health for the sake of convenience and avoiding responsibility. This behavior is a gross violation of public trust. Government is supposed to work for the people, not against them. In West Virginia, we see a system that worked to protect itself rather than the families it serves. They didn't just fail to test. In some cases, They actively halted testing when the results started looking bad. It's like a doctor who finds a tumor on an X-ray and decides to just throw the film in the trash instead of telling the patient. It's medical malpractice on a community-wide scale, and it's unconscionable. The residents of Huntington and Milton were left completely in the dark. They continued to drink the water, cook with it, and give it to their children, all while being assured that everything was safe. The officials who held the truth hostage have to answer for this. How could they sleep at night knowing what they knew? This deliberate deception turned a manageable problem into a full-blown crisis, leaving a trail of sickness and mistrust that will take years, if not decades, to heal. But the deception didn't stop there. Authorities actually raised the allowable parts per million, the ppm, of contaminants in the water, insisting it was still safe. This move gave polluting companies a free pass to keep dumping toxins, all under the guise of new, relaxed standards. And while they rail against Chinese pollution, they quietly lower the bar for our own water safety. The result? Animals are getting sick, crops are failing, and people, especially children, are suffering from the ongoing effects. The decision to raise the limits didn't protect the community, it condemned it to more harm. And while West Virginians struggle with water and power, another crisis is brewing, one that's all about money. As governor, Jim Justice pushed through massive personal income tax cuts, over $1 billion a year, including a 21.25% cut in 2023 and another 6% slashed the following summer. These cuts were touted as a win for taxpayers, but the reality is far more complicated. Attorney General Patrick Morrisey has sounded the alarm, revealing a projected $400 to $600 million budget deficit directly linked to these tax cuts. Justice, for his part, insists the state can dip into reserve funds to cover the shortfall. But Morrisey argues those reserves are for true emergencies, floods, disasters, not self-inflicted budget holes. The fight over how to pay for these tax cuts is more than political theater. It's a battle over the future of West Virginia's schools, infrastructure, and basic services. But the story doesn't end with state finances. Justice's own coal companies have racked up a staggering record of unpaid taxes and debts. In 2021, Frontier Coal Company, owned by Justice, owed $124,000 in back taxes. His companies have also failed to pay reclamation fees to the Special Reclamation Fund, which is supposed to clean up abandoned mines. The pattern is national. As of 2019, Justice's businesses owed $3.7 million in back taxes, $71 million in reclamation obligations, and $3.5 million in unpaid sales taxes. By 2024, the total business debt and lawsuits against Justice's companies reached into the hundreds of millions. These aren't just numbers, they represent broken promises to workers, communities, and the environment. While ordinary West Virginians are expected to pay their taxes on time or face penalties, the governor's own companies have been given extension after extension, leaving communities shortchanged and environmental hazards unaddressed. The double standard is glaring, and it's the people who pay the price. Meanwhile, state leaders tout the promise of data center development and a tech-driven future. But how can West Virginia attract high-tech jobs, cybersecurity firms, or even basic healthcare investment when water and electricity are unreliable? The reality is, no tech company can thrive where the tap runs brown and the lights go out. And while Manchin warns about China cornering the market on clean energy, our own infrastructure crumbles from neglect. In Lincoln, Mingo, and Cable counties, rural families face frozen or contaminated water, lead pipes, and chemical exposure. They tell stories of waking up to no water at all, or water that smells like chemicals, while officials claim progress and pose for ribbon cuttings. Meanwhile, Justice and Morrisey's public spats over mining taxes distract from the real crisis at hand. And if all that weren't enough, consider this. In Huntington, West Virginia, city officials recently offered an extension on unpaid taxes, not to struggling families or small businesses, but to government agencies themselves. While ordinary citizens are expected to pay their taxes on time or face penalties, these agencies were given extra time and leniency. This double standard sends a clear message: those in power play by a different set of rules. When the very agencies responsible for serving the public are granted special treatment, It erodes the foundation of fairness and accountability. Make no mistake, this water crisis is a civil rights issue. When government agencies fail to protect their citizens and actively hide life-threatening information, it is a violation of our fundamental right to life, liberty, and security. And as is so often the case, this failure disproportionately harms the most vulnerable among us. The communities around Huntington and Milton with higher rates of poverty and larger minority populations are the ones hit the hardest. They often live in areas with older infrastructure and have fewer resources to fight back or protect themselves. This is the textbook definition of environmental injustice. It's a pattern we see repeated across the country, from Flint, Michigan, to Jackson, Mississippi. The powerful and privileged are protected, while the poor and marginalized are left to drink poisoned water. It's a quiet, insidious form of discrimination. It's deciding that some lives are worth less than others, that some communities are disposable. Access to clean water shouldn't depend on your zip code, the color of your skin, or how much money you have in the bank. It is a universal human right. We cannot stand by and let this happen. The time for excuses is over. We demand full accountability. That means every official who knew about the contamination and chose to hide it must be held responsible. We need transparent, independent investigations to uncover the full extent of this cover-up. But accountability isn't enough. We need systemic change to ensure this never happens again. That means strengthening our environmental laws, investing in our crumbling water infrastructure, and guaranteeing that testing is frequent, transparent, and independent. This is a call to action. For the people of West Virginia and for every community facing a similar struggle, you are not alone. Your voice matters. Keep speaking up, keep demanding answers, and keep fighting. We must force our leaders to see this not as a line item on a budget, but as a moral obligation. The health of our children and the integrity of our government are on the line. This is more than a fight for clean water. It's a fight for justice, equality, and the very soul of our country. And it's a fight we have to win.